Marilyn Monroe's housekeeper spent 23 years telling the same carefully rehearsed story about the night Marilyn died. Then, in 1985, she sat down with a BBC documentary crew, gave her usual account, and at the end of the interview, believing the cameras had stopped rolling, leaned forward and said, "Why, at my age, do I still have to cover this thing?" The microphone was still on, and what came out of Eunice Murray's mouth in the minutes that followed contradicted almost everything she had told police, investigators, and biographers since August 5, 1962. Bobby Kennedy had been in the house that night. Marilyn was not dead when the doctor arrived, and Murray had been covering something up for over 2 decades, something she clearly believed was still dangerous enough to hide, even after both Kennedy brothers were long in their graves. That moment, caught on tape and broadcast to the world, cracked open one of the most debated deaths in American history, and to understand what Murray was actually confessing to, you have to go back to the house on 5th Helena Drive in Brentwood and understand who Eunice Murray really was and what she had been placed there to do. Murray was not simply Marilyn's housekeeper. She was chosen specifically by Marilyn's psychiatrist Dr. Ralph Greenson to serve as a live-in companion and watchful presence inside the home, which made her, in the most literal sense, the last person known to have seen Marilyn Monroe alive and the first person to claim she had discovered something was wrong. Every question about what happened on August 4, 1962, runs directly through her testimony, and that testimony changed in measurable, documented ways across 30 years. The story Murray told police on the morning of August 5th was this. She had woken at around 3 in the morning, noticed the light on under Marilyn's locked bedroom door, been unable to get a response, called Dr. Greenson, waited for him to arrive and break the window to enter, and then waited again while Greenson called physician Dr. Hyman Engelberg, who pronounced Marilyn dead. The police were not notified until 4:25 in the morning, a gap of at minimum 35 minutes between the official time of death and the call to the LAPD, a delay that was never satisfactorily explained by anyone in that house. The first officer on the scene was Sergeant Jack Clemens, and what he found when he arrived at 4:25 troubled him deeply. Marilyn's body was positioned in a way he described as inconsistent with someone who had died in agony from a barbiturate overdose. The pill bottles were arranged in a way that appeared deliberate rather than scattered in panic. The house was full of people: Marilyn's press agent Pat Newcomb, her doctors, Murray, and her son-in-law Norman Jeffries, all of them present in the early hours of the morning, with no clear explanation for how they had all arrived so quickly. And Eunice Murray was doing laundry at 4:30 in the morning. When Clemens asked her why, she gave him no answer that made sense. The laundry has been central to speculation about that night ever since, because a number of investigators and biographers concluded the bedsheets may have contained physical evidence of how the drugs were actually administered, evidence that needed to disappear before the police formally took possession of the scene. The toxicology report produced by the coroner found extremely high concentrations of Nembutal and chloral hydrate in Marilyn's blood and liver, but very little residue in her stomach, which toxicologists said was inconsistent with someone who had swallowed that quantity of pills orally. The drugs were in her system but had not passed through her digestive tract in the volumes that oral ingestion would require, a discrepancy that pointed multiple investigators toward the conclusion that the drugs had been administered in a different way entirely. Murray's bathroom was connected to her own bedroom, which meant she had no reason to pass Marilyn's door in the middle of the night to use it, making the foundational detail of her original account, the light visible under Marilyn's door while Murray was walking down the hallway, physically impossible given the layout of the house. In her 1975 memoir, Murray quietly changed that detail, saying it was the telephone cord running under the door that had alarmed her, something she had not mentioned to police in 1962 at all, and in doing so she acknowledged, without explicitly saying so, that the story she had given investigators 13 years earlier was not accurate. Handyman Norman Jeffries, who was Murray's son-in-law and was working at the house on August 4th, gave an account in later years that introduced a detail the original investigation had entirely missed. He said Robert Kennedy arrived at 5th Helena Drive between 3 and 4 in the afternoon, accompanied by Peter Lawford, President Kennedy's brother-in-law and the social connection, through whom both Kennedys had been introduced to Marilyn. Lawford made it clear, Jeffries said, that he wanted both Murray and Jeffries out of the house. They were told to go to the market. When they returned, roughly an hour later, the visitors were gone, but Marilyn, Jeffries said, was hysterical and looked scared out of her mind. A description that bears no resemblance to someone who spent her final evening quietly watching television and taking sleeping pills, which is the version of events that the official account had always implied. Kennedy had reason to be there. Marilyn had been keeping a small red diary in which she documented her interactions with both the President and the Attorney General, things they had told her, promises they had made, and the details of sensitive political conversations that had apparently moved from the bedroom into pillow talk. Multiple people who knew Marilyn confirmed the diary existed. By the summer of 1962, Robert Kennedy wanted it back, and Marilyn, who felt discarded and humiliated by the sudden and unexplained end of both relationships, was reportedly not inclined to simply hand it over. A CIA document dated August 3, 1962, the day before her death, and declassified and released under the Freedom of Information Act in 2006, referenced a wiretap on Marilyn's telephone that documented her calls to the Attorney General's office, complaining that she had been cut off by both brothers and was threatening to hold a press conference about what she knew. Private investigator Fred Otash, who was hired to surveil Marilyn's home and claimed to have recordings from that night, said the tapes captured a violent argument between Marilyn and Robert Kennedy, in which she demanded to know why he had broken his promises, told him she felt passed around like a piece of meat, and refused his demands to return her documents. Whether those recordings still exist, and in whose possession they might be, has never been established. Natalie Jacobs, the wife of Marilyn's press agent Arthur Jacobs, said in an interview that she and her husband were informed of Marilyn's death during a Hollywood concert on the evening of August 4th, hours before the official discovery time of 3:30 in the morning. If that account is accurate, it means Arthur Jacobs knew Marilyn was dead before Murray claims to have discovered it, which means the delay between Marilyn's death and the call to police was not confusion or shock, but a deliberate interval, an interval during which Eunice Murray was doing laundry at 4:30 in the morning and the pill bottles were being arranged on the nightstand. When the BBC documentary crew caught Murray's off-camera moment in 1985, they pressed her afterward to repeat what she had said on the record. She became flustered, said she was confused, insisted she was an old woman and her memory was not what it used to be, and walked back almost everything she had just admitted. She gave no more substantive interviews about August 4th for the remaining 9 years of her life, dying in Tucson in March 1994 at the age of 92. The Los Angeles District Attorney's Office had reviewed the case in 1982 and found no evidence of foul play, though its own report acknowledged factual discrepancies in the original investigation without resolving them. The cause of death has never been officially changed. Marilyn Monroe's death still stands as a probable suicide. The same ruling entered on the morning after the night when, according to the woman who was there, Marilyn was not dead when the doctor arrived, and someone had been covering something up ever since. Why, at my age, do I still have to cover this thing? Eunice Murray said it believing nobody was listening. It turned out to be the most honest thing she ever said about that night, and she spent the rest of her life making sure she never said anything like it again.